I am.
Okay. I guess I'll start with just kind of overall. If there's one thing I keep hearing over and over again is that Germantown has a lot of trust to rebuild. Do you agree with that?
Richard, yes, completely so. Trust and confidence. You know, we have a water system that we take for granted sometimes as city servants and as residents. We think that it will always be there for us. And in this critical time when it wasn't, you know, people are frustrated and they want the confidence to know that their water system is there. Water is the foundation and the fluid for life, and it's important to people, and we disrupted people's lives for the better part of a week, and we've got a lot of work to do to regain that confidence.
I've heard more than once. Germantown prides itself on being a community of excellence. The Malcolm Baldridge Award. This is something that should not happen here. And frustration that it did and how it inconvenienced them for such a long period of time. As you look back at what happened over those 7 or 8 days, what would you have done differently?
Well, and that's a great question. You know, when you're in a crisis, in an emergency, and matter of fact, we're still in a state of emergency. It hasn't been lifted yet. It's good for 7 days at a time, and Thursday will mark 14 days that we're in this crisis. But looking back on things, communicating better with our community. You know, again, in the moment, we were bringing information as quick as we could, but oftentimes the goalposts proverbially moved during this crisis from working with multiple regulatory bodies that we could only produce so much information. But people are starved for information in today's society in the 21st century. And so we could do a better job with that. One of the things that, Richard, I'd like to do and make sure that I present that to our community here in short order is I'd like to get an independent review of our entire process with this. And I'm working towards naming someone outside of our organization and outside of our city to review the crisis management part of how we handle this situation, and then also look at our processes. You mentioned our motto. It's not a motto. Excellence every day is something we live by. We're not perfect, but we strive for perfection. And so if we falter in our systems, we need someone to come in and look at that on our behalf. That's not the City of Germantown employees, and it's not yours truly. So I'll probably have some information about that hopefully by the end of this week.
So we're here today to have you explain to the people of Germantown what happened. You feel like you owe them an explanation. Do you feel like you owe them an apology?
Oh, most certainly, most certainly. I'm sincerely apologize for the disruption in our life. I live here. I've lived here for almost a half a century. My parents do as well, and I take great pride in the responsibility that I have as a leader. And what goes with the responsibility is taking ownership of problems and then solving those problems and coming up with solutions. As I mentioned, no one's perfect, and me included. And so I can learn from these type of situations, and we will. So yes, I mean, sincerely, I apologize on behalf of our organization, and we'll learn from this experience and we'll recover from it.
I haven't talked to one person who believes just 100 gallons of diesel fuel leaked.
Sure.
They believe it was a lot more than that. Can you say for certain that that's all it was, or have you since discovered it was more?
Not at this time. It's still a rough estimate. You know, we reported as low as 15 gallons to 100 gallons, but we think it's probably 150 gallons. But we are still reviewing that part of the situation, and until then, I can't precisely say the amount.
What about the issue of human error?
Sure.
There are people who want heads to roll for this, based on the inconvenience that they went through. And you know, you've heard the stories.
Sure.
Kids who couldn't give or parents who couldn't give their kids a drink of water, doing the laundry and for the kids, and the bed sheets come out smelling like diesel fuel. On and on it goes. I know of a 80-year-old couple right now that doesn't feel safe drinking the water. But they have to believe that there was someone who made a mistake or did something they shouldn't. And they start by looking at the public works director, but there are other folks too.
Sure.
Do you feel like there needs to be some human accountability for what happened?
Oh, certainly. And again, it starts at the top and it starts with me. But We're still reviewing what occurred on the Wednesday of the refueling of a generator, a backup generator that had to be used because of a storm Tuesday to fuel the water distribution system that we have. Currently, the technician that was in charge of that refueling is on administrative leave, and we have to follow due process with that, Richard, because we owe that to not only our community, but we owe it to our employees as well. And when that's concluded, we'll have more information to share.
Rightly or wrongly, I think a lot of the explanations we were getting is that there was a leak, but there was an error made in the refueling of that.
Yes, well, and a combination of all of the above. There was a leak into the diesel moving into the ground and leaching into our system through a small leak in a pipe that then contaminated our reservoir. We did check the generator and have it fully researched for and inspected to see if it were any kind of defects. That led us to know that since there were no defects with the generator, that human error was involved, and we've since pinpointed that, but we're still reviewing and investigating that particular instance.
Is it just the one worker who's experiencing any kind of administrative action at this point?
Correct, just one at this time.
And you describe his title as, or hers as, a technician, I think you said?
Yes, a tenured employee with the city that was the technician for that particular duty and responsibility.
That hole in the pipe, a lot of people want to know, how was it not discovered earlier? And how do you plan to address this going forward? Who's inspecting the pipes?
Sure. Well, this pipe, from what I understand, is submerged. It's underground. It is 3 to 5 feet underground. And so, regrettably, you can't inspect every square inch of the piping network that's underground in our community. There are hundreds of miles of pipes that service our community from a water and sewer standpoint. This one, I think there was close to an inch and a half hole near the head of a screw or a lug nut, and then that was where the diesel leached into our system, and it's since been excavated and repaired. One of the things that I'd like to do with the independent review is to completely review our southern avenue, which would be also known as our western water plant, and completely review that area for safety, specifically as it relates to healthy drinking water moving forward. And so hopefully when we get our eastern water tower up and running, and I put into plans 2 days into this crisis for our team to expedite that work. We can't make it happen overnight, but we will bring that forward, and hopefully when we get our second water tower online, we can, and that's the purpose of redundancy, to have 2 water tower system and 2 treatment plants so that we can produce enough water that we could be reliant on just one of those and not both. So we could take one out of service and then we could flush, clean, remediate another one. I anticipate we'll do that when the Eastern Tower has been certified by TDEC, Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation.
Okay. Lots of calls for financial reparations.
Sure.
People want some money for what happened here, not only for homeowners, but small business people too. Planning to do that at all, if any, and when will people know how much they're going to get?
Well, I've directed staff to look at a credit on our water consumers' bills. That will have to be thoroughly vetted by our Financial Advisory Commission, our Finance Department, and then our legislative body, our Board of Mayor and Aldermen, will take that up. We'll do it in short order, but we're not going to rush to that conclusion. We will credit our water users, but it's to be determined what that amount will be. We'll have to do a significant amount of research and review. We also need to make sure that we're in compliance with the state in doing that. We've also reached out to our local congressman to see if there is funding for small business, SBA funding for businesses that may have lost revenue during that time, and we're still waiting on those programs to be identified for us.
Can you give me a time when you hope to have an answer for people about when you'll know exactly what people are going to get?
Well, and again, as I mentioned, I would like to get an independent body to review our processes. As such, in my mind, I would hope that they would give a preliminary report in 30 days and a long-term report in 90 days. That doesn't directly answer your question, but we would perceive that we would move with that sooner than later.
So people could expect to maybe have to wait as long as 90 days to know what kind of.
I would think we would be a little bit more expeditious in looking at the credit on our water users' bills. 90 days, I think, would be like for a final report for what occurred at Southern Avenue.
Okay, okay. And in determining that amount, there not only is there the actual cost of the water, I guess, but there is the inconvenience. Is there anything the city can do in that regard financially for people who were so inconvenienced by what happened?
Sure. Well, we've set up a call bank we have during the crisis time. We'll set up a dedicated email. We want people to let us know where they have been inconvenienced and also where there may be costs associated as well.
Okay. And then you got to feel for the hourly workers who come into
Sure.
Germantown every day, work at the McDonald's up the street, the Arby's, the restaurants around here, missed out on a lot of tip money. What happens to them?
Sure. Well, and again, I offer my sincere apology that that was interrupted and disrupted. When we're in a crisis emergency mode, those things occur. We will again look through the federal government and other means to see if we can provide some relief along the way. We've had people in healthcare from Germantown is known as a major healthcare provider for this region. Our hospitals were shut down. They weren't able to take in patients. There was a lot of disruption in life, and we'll try to figure a way to bring people back to that comfort level that things will be back to normal very, very soon.
This is going to haunt you for a while, isn't it?
Sure, without a doubt. I chose to lead. I've been elected to lead. I live here. I have to live with my neighbors, with my family, with my peers, with all 41,333 people. And we will make sure that we begin to earn confidence back over time. And only thing I can do is let my actions from this point forward demonstrate that. And I will tell you, Richard, and the people of Germantown, that is my primary goal. Initially, in the beginning of our crisis, in this water crisis, in this emergency, our focus was to get our water system back up and to get it back up with safe drinking water and potable water. We did that pretty expeditiously. I know it's longer than people would have liked, but we did that pretty quickly and worked very hard. Now we've got to win back people's confidence.
I won't use any derogatory words, but what was the point in all of this when you said, oh, fill in the blank, we've got ourselves a real problem on
Well,
our hands.
the Thursday that it occurred, we had a day where we actually hosted in Germantown the Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton. We had a luncheon for him at GPAC, and then we hosted the suburban mayors and had the Speaker join us as well. And I was notified about 2:30 of this emergency. We declared a state of emergency at 3:31 p.m. on Thursday. So from 2:30 on, there was this, we are in a crisis mode. And we have, the month of July has been unkind to this entire region, not just Germantown. We've had 3 significant storms in Germantown that created some flash flooding in our central part of our city. We lost power in our city. Some of us, my parents included, myself, we're out of power 3 and 4 days. People have lost the contents of their refrigerators and their freezers. Their cable and their broadband was cut, and then they lose their water system. I mean, this has been a tough month. July has been a tough month, and we've got a long way to go to be able to make sure we get back to the normal that Germantown deserves and desires.
In fact, you could argue had Germantown not suffered that power loss due to MLGW, and I don't know exactly where that point,
Sure.
what happened, where that occurred, none of this would have happened.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, that was the triggering effect. And one of the things that we can learn, again, I point back to this independent review, is we also need to understand how we communicate with MLGW. Everyone in my city wants their power cut on quickly. But there are times where we've got to be able to communicate with MLGW critical core assets that need to move first in line. As an example, a tree down on Dogwood that took out a circuit that powered our water station, that needs to be worked on first and foremost so that power can be reinstituted at a major safety asset and that we don't have to rely on the generator. Now, we know that in a crisis situation for MLGW, they have to decide where to deploy their assets. But we can better understand the flow of that, and that's not casting dispersions away from where we faulted, but we do need to learn from that and how we can make sure the chain of action occurs more quickly with our friends at the public utility.
How long did that generator have to run before the power was
Tuesday
restored?
through Thursday. Now, once we identified a problem, we got on the phone with the CEO and president of MLGW, Doug McGowan, and they sent a crew and expedited getting our system back up, and it was done pretty quickly. And again, as you review and reflect on that, perhaps if that had been done 48 hours earlier, we wouldn't be in this situation.
So you would like to pinpoint sensitive areas,
Sure.
core areas, like is the word
Sure.
you used, where if the circuit goes out that affects our water supply, then that needs to move up in the priority, just like they do already for hospitals or
Sure. Well,
things like that.
water supply, whether it be for police dispatch, all those areas. Now, all that is on redundant generators. As a matter of fact, we have the ability to, when we've done it before, we've had a generator that has faulted, and matter of fact, we almost lost our water plant in 2014 because we had a generator fail. We had to bring in a second generator, and those things occur. That things break over time. But to get to the better point that you just made, yes, critical safety infrastructure like water, police, fire, hospital network, those need to be first and foremost priorities.
You were elected mayor in 2014. This is your third four-year term. I wonder, when you look back at all the different crises you've had to deal with, or big issues, whether it be the 3Gs or building the road to go through, I forget what that was called.
Oh, the road realignment.
Road realignment,
Yeah.
COVID.
Sure.
Where does this rate?
It's by far the biggest crisis. And I've been in office 19 years, and 10 of that as an alderman. It's been the most significant crisis because at times it's been one where we have dealt with multiple partners and regulatory bodies that we're not able to, we have to work with those groups, and we can't necessarily make decisions without their concurrence. And so that was truly a challenge in this, and then making sure that we got our system back up running quickly. There were people that had many sleepless nights, and again, that's not to draw any type of sympathy this way, but people were working hard to try to get the system back up and running as quick as possible, and that's always something that weighs on you. We've had other things that we've endured over time, but this one, and it's freshest right now.
You're probably familiar with the website mytapwater.org. It's a website that uses waypoint analytical data and tracks water violations by municipality. And this has been referred to me by a lot of folks. It found 48 different water violations in Germantown. The next closest was 28 in Collierville. Memphis, Shelby County, Bartlett, all the others are way below that. How can you explain why the city's annual report, Ask People, indicated the water was near perfect when a look at this data
Sure.
suggests it was not?
Sure. Well, I think if you go broader into TDEC's website and look at it, those were reporting errors. And so some of those may have been involved with timing and deadlines and those type things, but water quality was never at issue.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's easily reflected on and can be actually authenticated.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you that one more time, I think.